Welcome to the Honest to Godcast, podcast dedicated to learning the truth, and the truth will set you free. I'm your host, Stephen B. Hello, fellow truth seekers and researchers. Glad you're here with me today. Today's topic, we'll get right into this. It might take a little bit to get through it, but this is going to be called an oopart revisited. As you know, oopart stands for out of place artifacts, and today's topic is about the most intriguing and fascinating oopart of all. Um, some of the oparts are just simply mind blowing to say the least, like the crystal skulls, the London hammer, and the Klerksdorf spheres, all of which have been covered in different episodes here on the Honest to God cast. And I've taken them to another level by suggesting that they're not just out of place artifacts, but they're also out of time artifacts as well. And that explains why some of these objects defy the laws of physics as we know them, and why, for example, some of them have been found in rock strata that's millions, even billions of years old, and they just shouldn't be there, but there they are. Like, for example, the human and dinosaur footprints in the same rock strata in Glen Rose, Texas. They shouldn't be there, but there they are. So then, the one I'm talking about is the most iconic and scientifically examined by many disciplines, forensic scientists, medical doctors, theologians, and over 40 different scientists in different fields of expertise. So there's so many disciplines involved in the study of this one object that they had to come up with a name for the study of this one object. The science is called syndology, and what that is the study of the Shroud of Turin, or Turin. I don't know if I'm saying that right, if I'm putting the emphasis on the right syllable or not. But anyway, doctors, medical doctors, forensic scientists, theologians. Anyway, the approach that they've taken to this anomaly of the shroud is in three major groups: material analysis, both chemical and historical, biology and medical forensics, and image analysis. I think there should include more, such as radiometrics, deterioration of light speed should be factored in, and other things that deal with measuring time. As I mentioned in other episodes, these are not just out of place, but they're also out of time artifacts as well. The shroud is rectangular, measuring approximately 14 feet 5 inches by 3 feet 7 inches. The cloth is woven in a 3-to-1 herringbone twill comprised of flax fibers. Uh, its most distinctive characteristic, though, is a faint brownish image of a front and back view of a naked man with his hands folded across his groin. The two views are aligned along the midplane of the body, and they point in opposite directions. The front and back views uh, of the head nearly meet in the middle of the cloth. The image in faint yellow straw color on the crown of the cloth fibers appears to be a man with a beard, mustache, shoulder length hair parted in the middle. He's muscular and tall. Various experts have measured him to be between 5'7" to 6'2" in height. Reddish brown stains are found on the cloth, correlating to the wounds of a man who had been beaten, tortured, and crucified. These are There are those that would say I'm going to play devil's advocate here, that would say that since Jesus didn't exist, then the shroud must be an elaborate hoax. And in a way, that's true, because his name was never Jesus. Jesus means little Zeus or son of Zeus. The historical figure that they calling Jesus, of course, never existed. So his name was Yeshua, and that doesn't translate to Jesus in English or any other language. It actually translates to Joshua. And I'm not here today to argue that point at all. Just that the shroud depicts a man who was crucified, and I don't care. You can call him Ishkabibble if you want to. It doesn't matter to me at all. Um, so if you guys want to debate that down here in the comment section, feel free to do so. Um, as I've mentioned in various episodes here on the Honest to God cast, you're always going to have your debunkers, or as I like to call them, the weather balloon guys. It's what they do. That seems to be their job. But most of the time, I found that by using the same evidence and correlating it from a different viewpoint, you can easily debunk the debunkers. Personally, I like the weather balloon guys because they teach us to be skeptical, but with an open mind, and motivate us to do research and find the truth, which is what this podcast is really all about. It's all about how you correlate the evidence. I mean, without the debunkers, for example, in the podcast I did about the fake miracles, when James Randi busted Peter Popoff for using electronic devices to fake the gift of word of knowledge. That's an example. Without that debunking, people wouldn't know that he was just being a huckster, taking their money, etc. So anyway, with that in mind, let me play devil's advocate and present another argument for it being a hoax. It's been purported that since the shroud didn't even show up until 1353 to 1357 in France, and that it was denounced a hoax by the local bishop, and that in 1988, three separate labs, one here in Arizona where I live, did a carbon 14 analysis and dated it between 1260 to 1390. So it had to be a hoax. End of story, right? Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's look at that. The shroud belonged to a knight named Geoffroy de Charnay, and he passed it on to his granddaughter, Margaret de Charnay, and she deeded the shroud to the House of Savoy in 1532, actually for two castles. She bought two castles with this piece of cloth. Um, but Geoffroy wasn't just an ordinary knight. He was a Knights Templar, and a high-ranking one at that. Think about that. This is the pilgrim's medallion of the Templar Knights. Now, if you were on a pilgrimage to or from Jerusalem and had this medallion, it would offer you safety and protection of the Knights Templar on your journey, and allowed you to do banking. A traveler could deposit money with the Templars in Europe and then pick it up in Jerusalem, or vice versa. It was a way to keep you safe on your journey from highway robbery while you were on the road. I'm sure you're familiar with Dan Brown's work, The Da Vinci Code, and they even made a movie out of it. Now, sure, I know it's a novel, and I get that, but it was based. If you've ever read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and other sources, then you can see that Yeshua of the Essenes was called Rabbi, and you couldn't hold that title unless you were married and had fathered at least one child. And of course, Mary Magdalene called him Rabboni, meaning my rabbi. And so we know in the Gnostic Gospels, in the Nag Hammadi, some of the apostles were bitching about Mary because he said, uh, because he was the disciple that Jesus kissed on the, and then the fragment breaks. So we don't know if it said mouth, forehead, whatever. But anyway, with this story, of Mary Magdalene and their daughter Sarah leaving the Holy Land, so called Holy Land, and moving to France, it does have some credibility. Furthermore, I suggest that the stories of the Priory of Zion, the Knights Templar, the story of Father Saunier and Rennes Chanteau, and all those narratives may very well be true. The Merovingians, all of it. So it it makes perfect sense to me that the shroud would have went to France with Mary Magdalene and eventually into the hands of the Knights Templar Geoffrey de Charnay. Now, as far as the carbon dating goes, in 1532 there was a fire and molten silver burned the shroud, and it was patched up by the nuns, and they would have had, of course, to use the fabric of that time. Not to mention there could have been other contaminants like mold or that sort of thing, and that may be why the carbon 14 dating gave those dates. But another part of the evidence is that the image wasn't brushed on, and it contains no pigments, no brush strokes, no dyes, none of that. What it is, it contains a type AB blood. Now, when the shroud was first photographed by Secondo Pia in 1898, the negative image on the shroud had an appearance suggesting of a positive image. This was the camera that he used at the time, and at the time it was state of the art. But we know technology has advanced, and you could take a picture of a postage stamp from space or at your backyard barbecue and determine whether you were eating watermelon or cantaloupe. So with new technology, it's been determined that the image is actually a hologram, and you don't get holograms from two-dimensional, um, photographs. As far as I know, I'm not a photographer, so I don't really know all of the science behind holograms. Just being honest, um, but with this 3D holographic technology, we can now see in 3D, and with 3D glasses on, I tell you, it's fantastic. You could see details from that you couldn't before with a regular photograph, like coins on the eyes. And they're coins that were minted in the year 29 with the inscription of Pontius Pilate. And in fact, those coins were used as currency all the way up until 70 AD when Titus and his armies sacked Jerusalem. Another part of the forensic evidence, too, is the pollen. A lot of it came from France, of course, but there is pollen from plants that only grow in the area of Palestine, one of which explains the crown of thorns and the injuries on the head area of the image. There are also flowers, but why would pollen and flowers, especially from that area? Well, it's because they were the ingredients that went into making the anointing balm for the bodies of the deceased back at that time. It was a normal custom. One of the other fascinating things that I noticed about the holograph image is that there's no distortion whatsoever on the backside. Well, why isn't there any? I mean, if you place a body on a flat stone lying face up, um, you know, uh, gravity would dictate that there would be distortion at the points of contact on the stone, you know, press out the muscle and skin and whatever. So my conclusion is that at the instant the image was flashed onto the cloth, the body had to have been levitating. You know, would have been at a 0 point of gravity. You know, like a singularity. And you know, bear in mind too, we live in a universe where it's been said that all things are possible. But you know, with all of this in mind, is this kind of thing possible? Yes, it is. And we don't have to go back centuries or millennia to wildly speculate about it. May I present to you Henry Wells? Now, Henry Wells was a freed slave who lived in Carrollton, Alabama. And in 1878, he was arrested for burning down the county courthouse, and a lynch mob gathered in front of the courtyard, you know, the new court that they rebuilt. And he yelled a curse at them. I don't mean, you know, he was cussing, swearing at them or whatever. You know, I actually laid a curse upon them. And right then, lightning struck, and the image was indelibly imprinted on the window pane. And here he is. This also happened to a condemned man in Scotland, who he was literally sweating blood the night before his execution. You know, and this can happen too. It's been proven, you know, medically. People with that amount of stress on them, capillaries break. You have a lot of capillaries in your face and whatnot. And so, anyway, he pressed his face against the window, and lightning struck, and bam, the same thing happened. So, my hypothesis is that the blood containing iron oxides and so forth, along with the anointing balm and a blast of energy, put the image on the shroud, just like the lightning did with Henry Wells. And so these are just a few things to think about. You know, once again, we're talking about out of place artifacts and out of time artifacts, and so um, I just say, you know, be skeptical, be very skeptical, but continue to have an open mind, and remember that we're dealing also here with a matter of faith. All I know for sure is that all things are possible, and for me personally, I don't need an icon, I don't need a relic, or anything like that to believe. You know, I even if the Pope himself walked up and gave me a cross inlaid with horse shit from Noah's Ark, uh, you know, I wouldn't need that to know that there was a great flood. Anyway, if you learned anything or want me to address some of these other issues, because I could do episodes on the Priory of Zion and the Knights Templar, Father Saunier, Ren Chanteau, all of those different things. But I'd like to get some input from y'all. And so, anyway, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time today, and stay healthy. Bye for now.